Hey, Dragon Slayers. It's been about 9 hours or so since my last meal. My blood sugar is 86. Last meal was, man, I don't even remember. I think I had ground turkey and some vegetables of some kind. It's been a while. I don't really remember what I had. So today's video is all about carbohydrate quantity, frequency, and metabolic flexibility. Time to reach for the S.A.I.D principle again. That was the specific adaptation to impose demand. If we decrease our carbohydrate intake, we force our bodies to adapt. We automatically upregulate our fat oxidation pathways and slowly and gradually become less dependent on dietary glucose. This is almost like a form of metabolic exercise, and the rewards are quite amazing. Those who endure the discomfort of eating less glucose will tell you that becoming fat adapted eventually starts to feel like a superpower. You are much less tied to food and eating. Missing a meal goes from being a full scale hangry disaster to pretty much a non event. Exercise no longer requires carb loading before, during, and after because they are buffered by the liver and then slowly released until they are metabolized. Eating dietary carbohydrate is a time based event. For this reason, it makes sense to pay attention not only to the quantity of carbohydrates that we're eating, but also the frequency with which we eat them. Most glycogen is only depleted with high intensity, muscle glycogen is only depleted with high intensity exercise. So if you haven't exercised with a high intensity recently, you're going to have to rely on your liver to dispose of your dietary glucose, either stored as glycogen or, in the case of overflowing glycogen stores, converted to fat, a liver process called lipogenesis. Obviously, if you're trying to lose fat, you probably don't want a whole lot of lipogenesis going on. Nor do you want the fat displacement or fat sparing effect of a lot of carbohydrates. As the average person has room for about 100 grams of glycogen in their liver, it makes sense that a lot of recommendations for sedentary people is to have fewer than about 100 grams of carbs a day. Staying under 100 grams of carbs a day is one of the simplest fat loss plans on earth, and it's highly recommended for almost anyone who's trying to lose fat. Because it takes 12 to 24 hours to fully deplete liver glycogen and enter the full blown fat burning state of ketosis, it makes a ton of sense to shrink down your carbohydrate frequency as much as possible. If you only ate carbs once a day, you will trigger the fasted state of ketosis daily, even if you eat a fairly large quantity of carbohydrates at your single carbohydrate event. Therefore, you can have almost as much fat adaptation by limiting your carbohydrate frequency as you would by limiting your carbohydrate quantity. Of course, you can't always combine the two, and that's my personal favorite thing to do, and what Ted Naiman recommends is to eat a limited amount of glycemic carbs once a day. It is quite likely that most of the benefits of intermittent fasting are due to the reduced frequency of eating carbohydrates and the expanded period of the day during which your body is forced to oxidize fat instead. The holy grail of metabolism is metabolic flexibility. So, what is metabolic flexibility? The ability to easily dispose of dietary fuels and easily switch from one fuel to the other without difficulty. For optimum metabolic flexibility, you need several things in place. First, you need some sort of room in your adipocytes so that you can easily store the incoming dietary fat. If your fat cells are full and overflowing, there is an increased fat energy in your circulation. You are not going to be metabolically flexible. Second, it helps to have plenty of disposal room for carbohydrates as well in your liver and your muscles. Regularly depleting liver glycogen with a decreased carbohydrate eating frequency is fantastic. Having more muscle tissue and regularly depleting muscle glycogen is also fantastic for glucose disposal headroom. Both of these, of course, require high intensity exercise, resistance exercise to add muscle, and cardio to deplete glycogen. So, metabolic flexibility improves with leanness, high intensity exercise, both resistance and cardio, and the fat adaptation of periods of time without carbohydrates. So, when you're over fat and you do not work out and eat the standard American ultra high carb diet, you have small glycogen stores that are rarely, if ever, depleted. When you do weight training, add more muscle to your body composition and do intensity cardio, which is very effective at depleting glycogen. It's like a negative carbohydrate diet in a sense. You gain more glycogen storage the more muscle you have, and the more frequently you train at the highest intensity while eating a high protein, low energy diet. You deplete your glycogen storages often, and your body has no choice but to pull from its fat reserves to keep you alive. So that's what I've got for you guys today. Don't forget to like and subscribe. And remember that together you and I will slay the dreaded diabetes dragon.